Hello and welcome to the Bible for Worship at St. Paul Lutheran Church on this sixth Sunday after Pentecost, when our gospel lesson is written in Luke's Gospel, chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. Now, as Jesus and the disciples went on their way, Jesus entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him. She had a sister named Mary, who sat at Jesus' feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things, but few things are needed. Indeed, only one. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her." The Gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. The familiar sisters of the Bible, Mary and Martha, except here Luke introduces them as Martha and her sister Mary. And it's only here that we meet these sisters in Luke's Gospel. If Luke knew the other traditions of a Mary and Martha in Bethany by Jerusalem, traditions that John talks about in his Gospel in chapters 11 and 12, Luke gives no hint of it here. He doesn't even name the village where Martha lives with her sister, only that Jesus came there where Martha lived, Martha who had a sister, Mary. This whole story is just 5 brief verses, and yet how many questions it can raise for us. Perhaps the most perplexing one is that it seems to raise the question of a contrast between learning and service. Actually, that was a fairly big debate in Jewish culture in the first centuries, the time of Jesus, and for some time after that, as to whether Torah learning or acts of loving kindness, learning or service, was the greatest. And indeed, as in that Jewish tradition, so here we find that for Luke, for Jesus as Luke portrays him, these two are not really opposed. After all, how could they be? Luke has placed this brief story about Martha and Mary immediately after the story of the Good Samaritan, where Jesus' lesson to the legal expert who asks, "What must I do to be saved and who is my neighbor?" is to say, "Go and do likewise as the Good Samaritan has." Then what possibly can be portrayed here, if not the contrast between learning and doing? I think the answer comes in a word that's repeated here, that Martha is distracted. Luke tells us that she was distracted by many things, and then Jesus, in his own comment to her in the story, says, "Martha, you are distracted by many things." It's that distraction that is at issue with Martha, to the point where she not only isn't focused on Jesus, but she can even complain to Jesus about her sister, as though her action, all by itself, action for its own sake, should be self-justifying. And that Jesus calls distraction. It's the difference between what we do for its own sake and what we do as a response to Jesus, "Go and do likewise." When we listen to Jesus, when we sit at Jesus' feet as Mary does. We learn from Jesus what it is that we are to do. And never in Luke's gospel does Jesus say, take care of me, attend to me, make your house look good and fix a fine meal for me. When we listen to Jesus, we hear, take care of others and tell what God has done for you. After all, whatever it is that we might do in this world will ultimately come to an end with this world. But what Jesus teaches us is true to the end and beyond. And so when Mary is listening to Jesus, Jesus can say, this will never be taken from her. Not in this world, not in any imagination of any kingdom of God that one can think of. This really isn't about a contrast between listening and learning and doing. It's not a question of learn or do, but rather, as we find throughout the Gospel of Luke, it's a matter of listening to Jesus so that we learn to do. God bless.